The mountain loomed like a dare, its jagged peaks slicing through the Wyoming sky, whispering promises of freedom and danger. I stood at the trailhead, my heart pounding, not from the climb ahead, but from the woman beside me, oblivious to the storm she stirred inside me. Riley, my best friend since college, tossed her blonde hair and grinned, her eyes catching the dawn like they held the sun itself. "You ready to conquer this beast, Mara?" she asked, adjusting her backpack. Her voice was light, teasing, the way it always was, but it hit me like a spark in dry grass. I nodded, swallowing the truth I'd carried for years. I was in love with her, and she had no idea. We'd planned this trip for months, a 7-day trek through the Wind River Range. Just the two of us, chasing solitude and adventure. Riley, 27, straight as the trails we'd mapped, thought this was about escaping our desk jobs in Denver. For me, 26 and quietly queer, it was a chance to be near her, to steal moments under the stars where I could pretend she felt the same. But the mountains don't care about your secrets, and I had no idea how this week would unravel us both. The first day was all sweat and laughter. We hiked 8 miles, trading stories about college pranks and bad dates. Riley's laugh echoed off the granite cliffs, and I let myself believe we were something more, even as she talked about her latest fling with some guy named Josh. "He's sweet, but predictable," she said, kicking a pebble down the path. "I need someone who gets me, you know?" I wanted to scream that I did, that I'd memorized every quirk of her smile, but I just nodded, my throat tight. By dusk, we reached our first campsite near a glassy alpine lake. The air was crisp, the kind that bites your lungs and makes you feel alive. We pitched our tent, a small green dome that felt too intimate for my racing heart. Riley rummaged through her pack, pulling out a battered journal. "I'm writing about this trip," she said, her pen scratching in the firelight. "It's gonna be epic." "What's epic about blisters and granola bars?" I teased, trying to keep things light. She laughed, tossing a pine cone at me. "It's about us, dummy. Best friends versus the wild." Her words stung, a reminder of the line she'd drawn without knowing. Best friends. Nothing more. That night, I lay awake in my sleeping bag, inches from her, listening to her steady breathing. The stars outside were sharp, like they could cut through my silence. I wondered what it would feel like to tell her, to risk everything. But Riley was straight. She'd dated guys since I'd known her, never hinted at anything else. Confessing would be like jumping off a cliff without a rope. I closed my eyes, letting the mountains quiet bury my thoughts. The next morning, we broke camp early, the trail climbing steeper now. Riley led the way, her confidence pulling me forward. We crossed a rickety bridge over a rushing creek, and she grabbed my hand to steady me. Her touch lingered a second too long, or maybe I imagined it. "You okay?" she asked, her blue eyes searching mine. I nodded, my pulse hammering. "Just don't fall in," I said, forcing a grin. She laughed, but her hand stayed on my arm a moment longer, and I felt the world tilt. By midday, we hit a fork in the trail. The map showed 2 paths, one safe and steady, the other a rugged shortcut over a ridge. Riley's eyes lit up. "Let's take the ridge," she said, her voice daring. "It'll be faster, and the view's gotta be insane." I hesitated. Storms were forecast later, and the ridge looked exposed. But Riley's enthusiasm was contagious, and I couldn't say no to her. "Fine," I said, "but if we die, I'm blaming you." She winked, and my heart did that stupid flip again. The ridge was brutal, all loose rock and dizzying drops. We scrambled upward, the wind picking up, clouds gathering like a warning. Riley was ahead, her silhouette sharp against the graying sky. I watched her, torn between awe and fear, not of the climb, but of how much I needed her. Then a misstep. Her foot slipped on a loose shale, and she slid backward, a yelp escaping her lips. I lunged, grabbing her wrist, my boots digging into the gravel. For a moment, we were frozen, her weight pulling against me. the drop below too close. "I got you," I said, my voice steady despite the panic. Her eyes locked on mine, wide and unguarded, like she was seeing me for the first time. "Mara," she whispered, her breath shaky. "Don't let go." I didn't, not until we were both safe on solid ground, hearts racing. She hugged me, her arms tight around my shoulders, and for a second, I let myself believe it meant more. We made it to the ridge's crest just as the first raindrops fell. The view was worth it, peaks stretching endlessly, a world that felt ours alone. Riley stood close, her shoulder brushing mine. "This is why we're here," she said softly. "To feel something real." I wanted to tell her she was my real, but the words stayed trapped. Instead, I nodded, the rain hiding the tears I didn't let fall. That night, we camped in a sheltered hollow, the storm raging outside. Riley was quieter than usual, her journal untouched. "You okay?" I asked, poking at the fire. She looked at me, her face half-lit, shadows dancing in her eyes. "Today scared me," she admitted. "Not the fall, but I don't know. I just felt something." My heart stopped. "What?" asked, barely breathing. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Nothing. Just glad you're here." I smiled, but inside, I was unraveling. What did she mean? Was I reading too much into it, or was something shifting? As the fire died, Riley scooted closer, her sleeping bag brushing mine. "Mara," she said, her voice low, "you ever feel like you're hiding something, even from yourself?" The question hit like a stone through glass. I wanted to say yes, to spill everything, but fear clamped my mouth shut. "Sometimes," I whispered. She nodded, her eyes distant, and we fell silent. The storm howled, but inside me, a bigger one was brewing. The rain stopped by dawn, leaving the air heavy with the scent of wet pine and possibility. Riley was up first, her blonde hair tangled from sleep, her smile brighter than the sunrise breaking through the clouds. I watched her boil water for coffee, her movements sure and familiar, and wondered how I'd survive 4 more days of loving her in silence. "You slept like a rock," she said, tossing me a granola bar, snoring and all. I rolled my eyes, grateful for the banter that kept my feelings at bay. "You're one to talk," I shot back. "You were muttering about Josh in your sleep." Her laugh faltered, and she looked away, stirring the coffee with more focus than it needed. "Yeah, well, Josh's history," she said quietly. My heart leapt, but I didn't dare ask why. We packed up and hit the trail, the path winding through meadows bursting with wildflowers. The mountains felt alive, their beauty a cruel contrast to the ache in my chest. Riley was quieter today, her usual chatter replaced by long stretches of silence. I caught her glancing at me, her expression unreadable, and each look chipped away at my resolve. Was she sensing the tension I carried, or was it something else? By noon, we reached a high alpine valley, the trail flanked by snow-dusted peaks. Riley stopped to snap photos, her camera clicking as she captured the vastness. "This place makes everything else feel small," she said, lowering the lens. "Like all the noise in my head just stops." I nodded, wishing I could say the same. My head was a storm of her voice, her touch, the way she'd looked at me on the ridge. We ate lunch on a flat boulder, sharing a thermos of soup. Riley's knee brushed mine as she passed it, and I froze, the contact electric. "You're quiet today," she said, her tone gentle but probing. "Everything okay?" I wanted to tell her the truth, that every moment with her was a battle between hope and heartbreak, but I couldn't. "Just tired," I lied, forcing a smile. She studied me, her blue eyes piercing, then nodded. "You tell me if something was up, right?" I swallowed hard. "Yeah, of course." The afternoon brought a new challenge, a river crossing, swollen from the storm. The water roared, cold and fast, the stepping stones slick with moss. Riley went first, her balance shaky but determined. Halfway across, she wobbled, her arms flailing. I grabbed her backpack strap, steadying her, my hand lingering on her shoulder. "Thanks," she said, breathless, her face close to mine. For a moment, the world was just us, the river's roar fading to a hum. Then she pulled away, and the moment broke. We made camp early, the river's edge our backdrop. Riley seemed restless, pacing as she set up the tent. "You ever think about who you're supposed to be with?" she asked suddenly, her voice cutting through the dusk. I froze, my hands fumbling with the fire starter. "Like soulmate stuff?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She shrugged, sitting cross-legged by the fire. "Not exactly. Just someone who sees you. Really sees you." My heart pounded. "Yeah," I said softly. "I think about that a lot." She looked at me then, her gaze steady, and I felt exposed, like she could see the truth I'd buried. "You're easy to talk to, Mara," she said. "I don't know why I'm saying this, but I feel like I can tell you anything." I wanted to scream that she could, that I'd hold every piece of her, but fear kept me silent. "I'm here," I said instead, my voice barely steady. She smiled, small and unsure, and turned back to the fire. That night, we shared the tent again, the river's song lulling us. Riley was closer than before, her sleeping bag pressed against mine. I could feel her warmth, her presence, a weight I both craved and dreaded. "Mara," she whispered in the dark, her voice soft but urgent. "You ever feel like you're running from something?" My breath caught. "All the time," I admitted. She didn't reply, but her hand brushed mine, and she didn't pull away. I lay there, heart racing, wondering if this was the edge of something new, or the cliff I'd always feared. The next day, the trail grew tougher, climbing toward a pass that promised jaw-dropping views. Riley was back to her vibrant self, singing off-key to keep our spirits up. But I noticed small things, her lingering glances, the way she'd touch my arm to point out a view. Each gesture felt like a breadcrumb, leading me somewhere I didn't dare hope for. We reached the pass by late afternoon, the world unfolding below us in a sea of peaks and valleys. Riley stood at the edge, wind whipping her hair, and turned to me with a smile that felt different, softer, more intimate. "You make this better," she said, her voice almost lost in the wind. "This whole trip it's you." My heart stopped. Was she saying what I thought? I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, a crack of thunder split the sky. The storm we'd dodged was back, and it was coming fast. We scrambled to find shelter. The moment shattered, but her words echoed in my mind, a spark I couldn't ignore. Rain lashed the mountainside, turning the trail into a slick, muddy gauntlet. Riley and I huddled under a tarp we'd rigged between two pines, our breath visible in the cold. Her words from the pass, "It's you," hung between us, unspoken but heavy, like the storm clouds choking the sky. "We can't stay here," I said, squinting through the downpour. The trail ahead was a blur, and the wind howled like it wanted to tear us apart. Riley nodded, her face set with that stubborn determination I loved. "We'll find cover," she said, grabbing my hand. Her grip was firm, grounding, and I followed her into the chaos, my heart a tangle of fear and hope. We stumbled down the trail, boots slipping on wet rock. Lightning cracked, illuminating Riley's silhouette, strong, fearless, and maddeningly unaware of how she unraveled me. We found a shallow cave, more an overhang than shelter, but it was enough. Soaked and shivering, we pressed close, sharing body heat as the storm raged. Her shoulder against mine felt like a lifeline, and I hated how much I needed it. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft over the rain's roar. Her blue eyes found mine, and for a moment, the storm didn't exist. "Yeah," I lied, my voice cracking. "Just cold." She frowned, like she could see through me, and pulled her jacket tighter around us both. "You're shaking," she said, her hand brushing my arm. I wanted to tell her it wasn't the cold, that it was her closeness, her words, the impossible hope she'd sparked. We sat in silence, the cave's walls glistening with damp. Riley pulled out her journal, flipping to a blank page. "I need to write this down," she said, her pen moving in quick, urgent strokes. "This trip, it's changing me." I watched her, my chest tight.
"How?"
I asked, barely above a whisper. She paused, her pen hovering. "I'm figuring out what I want," she said, her eyes flicking to mine. "What matters?" My heart pounded, but I couldn't ask what she meant, not yet. The storm eased by nightfall, leaving a sky bruised with stars. We set up camp nearby, too exhausted to move far. Riley built the fire, her hands steady despite the cold. "You ever feel like you're not who you thought you were?" she asked, poking at the flames. Her voice was raw, like she was peeling back layers. I nodded, my throat tight. "All the time," I said, like I'm hiding from myself. Her eyes met mine, sharp and searching, and for a second, I thought she might say it, whatever it was that had been simmering between us. Instead, she smiled, soft and sad. "You're the best part of this trip, Mara," she said. "I don't know what I'd do without you." The words were a gift and a wound, so close to what I wanted but not enough. I forced a smile, my heart splintering. "Same," I said, and we fell silent, the fire crackling between us. The next morning, the trail was a mess, but the sun broke through, painting the mountains gold. Riley was quieter, her usual energy tempered by something I couldn't name. We hiked through a forest of twisted pines, the air sharp with resin. She kept pace beside me, her arm brushing mine now and then, each touch a question I didn't know how to answer. By midday, we reached a meadow, the grass swaying in the breeze. Riley stopped, dropping her pack. "Let's stay here a bit," she said, lying back in the grass, her arms behind her head. I joined her, the ground cool beneath me. The sky was endless, a blue that felt like it could swallow my secrets. "Mara," she said, her voice soft. "Can I ask you something?" My stomach twisted. "Sure," I said, bracing myself. She turned to face me, her eyes serious. "Have you ever been in love with someone you shouldn't?" The question hit like a punch. I stared at her, my mind racing. Was she talking about me? About herself? "Yeah," I said finally, my voice barely audible. "It's complicated." She nodded, like she understood, and looked back at the sky. "It's terrifying," she whispered. We stayed there for hours, talking about everything and nothing, dreams, fears, the way the mountains made us feel small and infinite. Riley's hand found mine in the grass, her fingers curling around mine like it was the most natural thing. I didn't pull away, didn't dare breathe. "I'm glad it's you here," she said, her voice so soft it broke me. I wanted to tell her everything, to confess the love I'd carried for years, but the words stayed locked inside, heavy as stone. As dusk fell, we set up camp in the meadow, the stars brighter than ever. Riley wrote in her journal again, her face lit by the fire's glow. "What are you writing?" I asked, unable to stop myself. She hesitated, then handed me the journal. "Read it," she said, her voice unsteady. My hands shook as I opened it, her words spilling across the page. I thought I knew who I was, but Mara makes me question everything. What if the person I need has been here all along? I looked at her, my heart in my throat. "Riley," I started, but she shook her head, her eyes wide with fear, and something else, something that looked like hope. The journal trembled in my hands, Riley's words burning into me like embers. She was watching me, her face a mix of fear and defiance, like she'd just bared her soul and was waiting for the world to collapse. I wanted to speak, to tell her I felt the same, but the weight of years of hiding, hoping, hurting, kept me silent. "Say something," she whispered, her voice breaking. The firelight danced in her eyes, and I saw it then. The vulnerability she'd hidden, the crack in her certainty. I set the journal down, my heart pounding so loud I swore she could hear it. Riley, I started, but the words caught, tangled in fear. What if I'd misread her? What if this was a mistake? But her hand reached for mine, her fingers warm and steady, and I knew I couldn't run from this anymore. I've been in love with you for years, I said, the truth spilling out like water through a broken dam. I thought you were straight. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, the world held its breath. Then she laughed, a soft, shaky sound, and leaned closer. Mara, I thought I was straight too, she said. Until this trip. Until you. My heart stopped, then surged, hope flooding through me like sunlight. We sat there, hands clasped, the fire crackling as the night deepened. Riley's thumb brushed over my knuckles, and every touch felt like a promise. I wrote that because I'm scared, she admitted. I've never felt this way about a woman. But with you it's different. It's real. I wanted to kiss her, to close the distance between us, but the moment felt fragile, like a deer in a clearing. One wrong move, and it might bolt. Instead, we talked, our voices low, unraveling years of friendship and unspoken longing. She told me about her doubts, the way she'd questioned her feelings after the ridge, after the river, after every moment we'd shared. I kept thinking it was just the mountains, she said, her smile wry. But it's you, Mara. It's always been you. My chest ached with the weight of her words, the kind of ache that's half joy, half fear. The next morning, the air felt different, charged with something new. We packed up slowly, stealing glances, our hands brushing as we rolled the tent. The trail climbed toward a high lake, its surface rumored to be so clear you could see a reflection like a mirror. Riley walked closer to me now, her shoulder bumping mine, her laughter freer. I felt like I was floating, but doubt lingered. Was this real, or just a moment the mountains had conjured? By midday, we reached the lake, its water a perfect blue, reflecting the peaks like a painting. Riley dropped her pack and ran to the edge, splashing her hands in the icy water. Come on, Mara, she called, her grin infectious. I joined her, the cold biting my fingers, and we laughed, splashing each other like kids. Then she stopped, her eyes locking on mine, and before I could think, she leaned in and kissed me. It was soft at first, tentative, like she was testing the waters. Then deeper, her hands cupping my face, and I kissed her back, pouring years of longing into it. The world fell away, the lake, the mountains, the fear. It was just us, two hearts finally meeting. When we pulled back, her eyes were bright, her smile shy. Was that okay? She asked, breathless. I laughed, my heart soaring. More than okay, I said, and kissed her again. We spent the afternoon by the lake, talking and kissing, the line between friends, and something more blurring with every touch. But as the sun dipped, reality crept in. Riley was still figuring herself out, and I'd spent years guarding my heart. What happens when we leave? I asked, my voice quiet. She took my hand, her grip firm. I don't know, she said. But I want to find out. With you. Her words were a lifeline, but the mountain's vastness reminded me how fragile this was. That night, we shared the tent again, but everything was different. We lay close, her head on my shoulder, her breath warm against my neck. I'm scared, she whispered. Not of this, but of messing it up. I held her tighter, my own fears echoing hers. Me too, I said. But we'll figure it out. She nodded, and we fell asleep like that, tangled together, the stars above us silent witnesses to something new. The next day, the trail led us higher, toward the trip's highest point. The air was thinner, the stakes higher, and I felt it in every step, the weight of what we'd started, the fear of what came next. Riley was quieter, her hand finding mine often, like she needed the anchor. I wondered if she was wrestling with the same questions. Could this last beyond the mountains? Could we? The trail to the summit was relentless, a steep climb through scree and wind that tested our legs and our resolve. Riley's hand brushed mine as we hiked, a quiet reminder of the night before. Her kiss, her confession, the way we'd fallen asleep wrapped in each other. But the higher we climbed, the heavier the questions grew, pressing against my chest like the thin mountain air. "You okay?" Riley asked, pausing to catch her breath. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright with exertion and something deeper. Uncertainty, maybe, or hope. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Just feeling the altitude," I said, dodging the truth. I was dizzy, not from the climb, but from her, from the way she'd turned my world upside down with a single kiss. We reached the summit by noon, a rocky outcrop with a view that stole our breath. The Wind River Range sprawled below, a patchwork of peaks and valleys under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Riley stood at the edge, her hair whipping in the wind, and I watched her, my heart caught between awe and fear. She was beautiful, fierce, and mine, at least for now. But the real world waited below, and I didn't know if we'd survive it. She turned to me, her smile soft. "We made it," she said, stepping closer. Her hand found mine, and she pulled me to the edge, our fingers laced. "This feels like the top of the world," she whispered. I wanted to freeze this moment, to stay here where it was just us, no labels, no doubts. But the wind carried a chill, a reminder that nothing lasts forever, not even mountains. We sat on a slab of granite, sharing water and silence. Riley pulled out her journal, but instead of writing, she handed it to me. "Write something," she said, her voice teasing but earnest. I hesitated, then took the pen, my hand shaking. "I love you, Riley, and I'm terrified you'll slip away." I didn't let her read it, closing the journal with a snap. She raised an eyebrow but didn't push, and I was grateful. Some truths were too raw for sunlight. The descent was treacherous, the trail loose and steep. Riley slipped once, her hand grabbing mine for balance, and we laughed, the sound sharp against the rocks. But her touch lingered, her fingers tracing mine before letting go, and I felt the shift again, something unspoken growing between us. By dusk, we reached a small clearing, perfect for our penultimate camp. The air was still, the stars piercing the twilight, and Riley's mood seemed lighter, like she'd left some weight on the summit. We built a fire, the flames casting shadows on her face as she talked about her life in Denver, her job, her family, the expectations she'd always tried to meet. "I've been running on autopilot," she said, her voice low. "Dating guys, doing what I thought I should. But this trip it's waking me up." Her words hit me hard, and I reached for her hand, needing the contact. "You don't have to have it all figured out," I said. "Not yet." She squeezed my hand, her eyes shining. "I know, but I want this. Us." We kissed again, slower this time, the fire's warmth mixing with hers. It felt like a vow, fragile but fierce, and I let myself believe it could last. But as we crawled into the tent, doubt crept in. Riley was new to this, to loving a woman, to questioning everything she'd known. What if she'd changed her mind? What if the world below pulled her back to who she'd been? The next morning, we woke to a sunrise that painted the mountains pink. Riley was quiet, her fingers tracing patterns on my arm as we lay in the tent. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Not of you, but of what comes next. My family, my friends, they won't get it." I swallowed hard, my own fears rising. "We'll face it together," I said, hoping I sounded braver than I felt. She nodded, but her eyes were distant, and I wondered if she was already slipping away. The trail that day was gentler, winding through a forest of aspens, their leaves golden in the late summer light. Riley walked close, her hand brushing mine, but there was a tension in her now, a hesitation I hadn't seen before. At lunch, she sat across from me, picking at her food. "What if I'm not ready?" she asked suddenly, her voice small. "What if I mess this up?" My heart sank, but I reached for her hand. "You don't have to be ready," I said. "Just be honest." She nodded, but the doubt in her eyes lingered, a crack in the dream we'd built. By nightfall, we camped near a quiet stream, the water's murmur a soft counterpoint to the storm in my head. Riley wrote in her journal again, her pen moving slowly, like she was wrestling with every word. I wanted to ask what she was writing, to know if she was still with me, but I couldn't. Instead, I lay beside her in the tent, listening to her breathe, praying the mountains would hold us together just one more day. The final full day of our trek dawned crisp, the mountains glowing under a sky that felt too perfect for the uncertainty between us. Riley's quiet mood lingered, her smiles fleeting, her eyes carrying a weight I couldn't fully read. I wanted to hold her, to anchor us to the lake, the summit, the moments when she'd felt like mine, but the trail was pulling us back to reality, and I feared what we'd find there. We hiked in near silence, the trail descending through a canyon where the air grew warmer, the peaks giving way to rolling hills. Riley's hand brushed mine once, twice, but she didn't hold on, and each time, my heart sank a little deeper. "You're quiet," I said finally, unable to bear the distance. She glanced at me, her expression torn. "Just thinking," she said. "About everything." I nodded, my throat tight, and we kept walking, the space between us louder than words. By midday, we stopped at a lookout, the view stretching toward the plains where our lives waited. Riley sat on a rock, her knees pulled to her chest, and I joined her, the silence heavy. "Mara," she said at last, her voice soft but steady. "I meant everything I said. I want this, us. But I'm terrified I'll hurt you." Her honesty cut, but it was a relief too, like a storm finally breaking. "I'm scared too," I admitted. "But I'd rather hurt than lose you without trying." Her eyes softened, and she reached for my hand, holding it like a lifeline. We talked, then really talked, about what waited below, her conservative family, my own fears of rejection, the world that might not understand. "I've never done this," she said, her voice raw. "Loved someone like this. But I want to learn. With you." Tears stung my eyes, and I squeezed her hand. "We'll learn together," I said, and for the first time that day, her smile felt real. The afternoon was easier, the trail leveling out, the tension between us easing with every step. We laughed again, swapping stories, stealing touches. At one point, Riley stopped to pick a wildflower, tucking it behind my ear with a shy grin. "You look good in the mountains," she said, and I blushed, my heart lighter than it had been in days. But as the sun dipped, the end of the trail loomed, and with it, the question of what came next. We made camp near the trail's end, a grassy clearing with a view of the stars. Riley built the fire, her movement sure, and I watched her, memorizing every detail, the way her hair caught the light, the curve of her smile. After dinner, she pulled out her journal, but instead of writing, she handed it to me. "Write with me," she said. "Let's make a promise." My heart raced as we took turns, our words weaving together. "We choose each other, no matter what. We'll face the world together." I looked at her, my eyes burning. "You mean it?" I asked. She nodded, her hand on mine. "I do." That night, we lay under the stars, no tent, just our sleeping bags side by side. Riley's hand found mine, her fingers tracing patterns on my skin. "I'm not running anymore," she whispered. "I want this, Mara. I want you." I turned to her, our faces inches apart, and kissed her, slow and deep, the stars above us witnesses to a promise we'd fight to keep. We fell asleep like that, tangled together, the mountains guarding us one last time. The next morning, we packed up, the trailhead just a few miles away. Riley was quiet but steady, her hand in mine as we walked. The world below felt closer now, its weight pressing in, but her touch kept me grounded. "We'll be okay," she said, as much to herself as to me. I nodded, believing her, wanting to believe. The trail ended at a dusty parking lot, our car waiting like a tether to reality. We stood there, packs at our feet, and she turned to me, her eyes fierce. "This isn't the end," she said. "It's the start." I smiled, my heart full, and pulled her into a hug, ready to face whatever came next. The drive back to Denver was quiet, the hum of the car a stark contrast to the wild silence of the mountains. Riley's hand rested on mine, her thumb brushing my knuckles, a small anchor in the uncertainty of what lay ahead. We'd left the trail behind, but the weight of our promise, to choose each other, to face the world together, felt heavier with every mile. Back in the city, the noise hit like a wave. Our apartments, our jobs, the rhythm of normal life. It all felt foreign after the rawness of the mountains. Riley came over that first night, her journal tucked under her arm. We sat on my couch, the city lights spilling through the window, and she opened it to our promise. "I meant this," she said, her voice firm. "I'm not backing out." I nodded, my heart swelling, but doubt lingered. The world wasn't the mountains, and I knew the battles we'd face. The next week was a blur of stolen moments, coffee dates, late-night talks, her hand finding mine under the table. But Riley was wrestling with her truth. She hadn't told her family yet, and I saw the strain in her eyes when her mom called, asking about Josh, about plans she no longer wanted. "I need time," she told me one night, her voice shaking. "Not away from you, but to figure out how to do this." I held her, my own fears quiet, and promised I'd wait. One evening, she invited me to dinner at her place. Her apartment was warm, filled with the scent of pasta and the soft glow of candles. "I told my sister," she said, setting plates down, "about us." My heart skipped. "And?" I asked, bracing myself. She smiled, small but real. "She was surprised, but she wants to meet you. Properly." Relief flooded me, and I laughed, pulling her into a kiss. It wasn't acceptance from everyone, but it was a start. The weeks turned into months, and we navigated the messiness of love in the real world. Riley came out to her parents, her voice steady despite their silence. Some friends embraced us. Others drifted away. I faced my own battles, telling my colleagues, bracing for their questions. But through it all, Riley was there, her hand in mine, her journal filling with our story, not just the mountains, but the life we were building. One night, we drove back to the mountains not to hike, but to sit under the stars. Riley brought her journal, now thick with pages of us, our fears, our fights, our love. "I was so scared," she said, her head on my shoulder. "Not just of loving you, but of losing myself. But you make me braver." I kissed her forehead, my heart full. "You make me braver too," I said. We didn't have all the answers. The world was still sharp, its edges cutting at times. But we had each other, and that was enough. The mountains had brought us together, stripping away the noise, showing us who we could be. And as we sat there, the stars above us bright as ever, I knew we'd keep climbing, together always. The journal lay open between us, its final page a new promise. We're not perfect, but we're real. And we choose love every day. Riley's hand found mine, and we looked out at the peaks, their silhouettes steady against the sky. This wasn't the end of our story, but a beginning. One we'd write together, one step at a time.